Big fish on docks. Let's talk about some tips to help you get them in the boat right here on the Googan Lab. So recently did a deep dive in dock fishing for many days, fishing a tournament. And you know, I love dock fishing. I've done it for years. And there's some things that I just wanted to share with you, some tips that I think are gonna help you land more fish when you're dock fishing. So number one, when you're dock fishing, you know, most people, they go around the outside of the dock and they just kind of breeze through the easy, you know, outside posts and things like that. But when fish are really on docks, you got to think about that as a whole housing complex. Maybe they're going to be on the backside. Maybe they're going to be on the walkways. Maybe they're going to be on some brush that is buried up under the dock. Really start to dissect docks, and you're gonna see that a lot of times bigger fish are coming off something very specific, and you can take that to other docks if you can find it. So when I'm fishing for big bass on docks, I'm always gonna bump up my line size. And this especially goes with my Texas rigs and jigs. I'm gonna throw a crankbait, usually on 12 to 15 pound line. You know, this is 15 right here. I can still cast a crankbait okay, but it's really about getting that fish away from the cover. So if I need to cast a crankbait up under or on the side of the dock post, I usually go with 15. But when I'm really trying to dig in to a dock and flip up under it and try to get those fish that are buried in there, I'm gonna go with at least 20 pound fluorocarbon line. You're gonna get less bites with a bigger line diameter. That's just how it is. But for me, I would rather get the fish in the boat than get a bite on, let's say, 15 or 12 pound line and then just break the fish off. You know, if a fish is really up under something nasty, it's gonna be very difficult to get those fish out on lighter line. So at least 20 pound line. And my rod choice is gonna be a 7-foot rod. I like to go with the go-to. The Gold Go-To is my favorite dock fishing rod. It makes it very easy to pitch and target cast with something that is 7 foot or under. You know, under 7 foot, you get less leverage, but for me, I'm just under 6 foot. I feel like a 7-foot rod just works for me very well. So when you know that fish are on docks, speed is pretty important. So it's first of all important to figure out if they're gonna hit a bait like a crankbait, maybe on the outside of things, or if they're gonna be really up under there. Maybe they're in shaded areas or maybe they're in brush. Always look up underneath the dock and see if you see any ropes hanging down that are connected to brush. A lot of dock owners will do that. Or maybe you'll just see like the tips of the brush. That's gonna help you catch those big key fish that you're looking for. Now, the most important thing when you hook into a big fish on a dock is the angling aspect of it. So our first instinct is, you've got my worm, you've got my jig, I want it back, let me have it. And you start pulling on that fish really hard. Well, if you feel resistance on a post or brush, a lot of times you're gonna lose that fish. Even if you've got 20, 25 pound test, if you put a ton of tension right there, in that moment when that fish is at its most charged up, you're gonna break that line. So if I feel that resistance and that impact of that hook set on that brush or whatever it is, it really helps to have that higher pound fluorocarbon. But if I feel that, I'm gonna start letting the fish have some line back. And most of the time, if you let the fish have some line back, they will work themselves out of what they're in, and then you can make the judgment call, okay, now I'm gonna pull as soon as I feel that pressure let off. But it's in those first few seconds that are really key. If you just try to jack them while they're against something, you can break the line. So that's where angling comes in, that's where experience comes in. But the more you fish up under docks, you'll figure out that it's oftentimes better to let the fish have a little bit of line, give them some rebound, and then they'll swim out, and then you can pull them out away from the cover. For fishing jigs and worms, I'm definitely throwing a high gear ratio reel. That's another tip that I'll give you. You know, 7.5 and above, even 8 to 1s, those are fantastic, because as soon as that fish does start swimming out, or maybe you get a bump on your bait and the fish starts swimming towards you, the more line you can take up, the faster is gonna really help you land those fish. It just helps make up for mistakes that you make not seeing the fish move with the line. One last tip that I'll give you is, if you see a beautiful looking old Christmas tree under a walkway or some sort of post, maybe it's on the end that you figured out that's where those fish like to be, don't just throw it at one time. Throw at it 3, 4, 5 times, change angles a little bit, maybe switch a couple of baits to try to fish that a few more times, because oftentimes dock fishing, a lot of people do it, they'll make that one cast at it and just move on, but that fish could be sitting there, the fish of a lifetime. So if you're seeing a beautiful piece of cover up under a dock, throw at it more than once, 3, 4, 5 times, give it a couple of different looks with a crankbait or spinnerbait or something suspended, and then something on the bottom, just to make sure that you're not gonna miss that fish. So that is tips for catching bigger bass up under docks. And if you want to stay tuned for more tips, you know what to do. Subscribe right here to the Googan Lab. We'll see you next time.